Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Epic Investor Podcast. I'm here today with Rich Jarvis. My name is Jason Morris. Today we're going to dive deep and discuss the concept of 1% betterment, how the compounding effect can affect not only your personal life, but has an effect in your business life and your spiritual life. And we'll even identify some of the leadership components that are impactful in this pursuit. So with that, let's get started. So Rich, this topic about 1% betterment, hopefully everybody here has heard of the book called Atomic Habits. Excellent read. It's not a hard one. I find it captivating. It's an easy read, therefore. And it's simply powerful when you consider what it means to find 1% improvement. And I kind of just want to break that down a little bit. I want to give some real life examples. I think that there's power in sharing experiences as we apply this concept to not only business, but to just anything in life, really. And I guess to start, I would just ask you, Rich, if there was something in life that you could decide on, this is one area that I want to be at least 1% better today than I was yesterday. Is there something that comes to mind?
Whenever I think of life, you have your home life, right? Your family, your relationships with them. Then you have your work life and relationships with them, right? Everyone you work with. And then you have your community. And in reality, it's the same life. One of our core values is being authentic across all areas, or wherever you're at, you're the same. So that 1% improvement, to me, when I think personally, it's the same. It's whether it's personal, professional, at home, it's me. So if I can improve 1% better in relationships, it's across the board. I like the idea of targeting it too, where you pick a very specific relationship or skill set or even morning routine mindset, and say, I'm going to focus on that. And I think there's some power in narrowing it down.
You know, I'm absolutely guilty, Rich, of being better at things in business than I am in my personal life. I'm confident that resonates with a lot of people, but I'll look at my P&L, for example, and I will study that, and I will absolutely guarantee you that I will find a way to improve a single line of my expenses by just 1%. And I remember coming home, and I would come home one night and I'd celebrate with my wife. Check this out. I made an improvement by 1%, and it realized a $30,000 improvement to my bottom line. And she's like, "Great, can you do that at home too?" and I'm like, "Yeah, I could be better there, right?" I feel like all of us are looking for ways to improve. And I would absolutely bet that in a lot of ways it's paralyzing. There's so many things that I want to be better at, and I just don't know where to start, and I don't know which one should take priority over the other. Today's a different scenario than yesterday. Therefore, today's important things are different than yesterday's or tomorrow's important things. And
I
it's
listened
just
to one book this month, and so it's something else new that I want to do.
right. Like what project are you inundated with right now? And that's all consuming, right? And it changes next month. I totally respect that. And I feel like this might actually be a way to help calm the storm in your head and in your heart of where and how, because 1% seems very insignificant, right? Like, if I want to be 1% better today than I was yesterday, well, maybe I have to wake up a minute earlier, or I have to do one more rep at the gym, or spend 10 more minutes with my children. Like, that doesn't seem so insurmountable anymore to just improve by 1%. Which is the concept, right? So, well, I guess, if the concept is I want to improve 1% better, and now that is a palpable number. Okay, make a list. What areas do I want to get better at right now? And I would probably limit that list to just 5, right? We want to keep this manageable. So what might that look like? Now, I would like to focus on the business side, just because I've just had a lot of really great examples that have been measured, and I'm still trying to improve that in my personal life of how to measure those things. But in business, KPIs, tangible tangible numbers that you can put linear so you can show differences. You can show actual results from those improvements. One way that I love to find 1% improvement is when I'm buying a business. Everybody's objective when they buy a business is, where can I find the hidden gems? Where can I find the hidden money that we didn't capture during due diligence or wasn't revealed to us from the sellers that I can add to my bottom line? And it sparks a very fun project, a fun experience. You sit with your newly acquired bookkeeper, or you sit with your newly acquired team, and you go through your P&L line by line by line by line. Talk to me about this maintenance budget. What exactly is that? And you dive deep. And through that deep dive, you identify that somebody decided to pay them an extra $100 just because they felt like it, right? Not merited, not because he did an outstanding job. They just said, oh, we wanted to round up 100 because it was easier. Or I had a $100 bill on me and it was just easier not to make change. There, you've captured some money, right? One of my favorites, by the way, real example here, we were in California running a business, and we were in this exercise of 1% betterment. We turned the air conditioning unit by 2 degrees so that the air conditioner wouldn't run as long every day, right? Well, it yielded like a $70 savings to the electric bill, but that's $70 every month, right? So we're talking like $850 a year, significant, right? So to me, that's what I talk about when I say, what does 1% better look like? These are tangible numbers. Now, one thing comes to mind. Maybe it's like our health. Is there an area we could be 1% better in on our health, right? And I think we immediately jump to the scale, right? Can I drop half a pound today, or this week, or this month versus last week or last month? And there's improvement. Can I? And I don't know about you. I'm measuring my macros. I'm measuring how many calories and protein and
I'm just trying to measure how many more reps I can do than my son in the gym, and it's getting harder.
your
He's getting a
16-year-old
lot.
son.
He's 17.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's been going about 2 years now, and it has been so fun to see those small improvements. And I remember him saying, "Dad, we should be working out every single morning." And I'm like, "Look, let's get some recovery in, right?" And I'm like, I even though that sounds fun, I couldn't physically do that. I need some rest.
sure.
But to see his small improvements over time now are paying huge dividends, and it's been 2 years. So just his work ethic and getting up and getting that habit, it started out pretty hard, but consistently just making that effort. Now he's up before I am. He's up 5 a.m. every morning, writing in his journal, getting ready to go. We head to the gym together. But his strength now is really coming around. It's fun. I've experienced the same thing. It's kind of fun to track everything that I've done and see the incremental improvements over time. I think I told you once, I have record of every workout I've done since 1998.
That's incredible. That's
So
an incredible metric. And I mean, and I bet one metric that you really can't measure is time with your son. I mean, that's probably one of the most important metrics in life is family.
I got a story for you though. So a large part of what Epic Capital does is we identify those core teams that work really well together, form partnerships around them and go deep into their pipelines. And all of that is to help establish and grow passive income and create wealth in real estate and business acquisitions for that matter. But those core teams, they just delivered 144 units, 6 months ahead of schedule and 800,000 under budget. And then you ask why? I mean, what is there a miraculous thing? And there was not one miraculous thing that happened. The only thing that made the difference is they took every line item, just like you were talking about, and they just said, "How can we improve this? How can we improve this?" And that's what got them 6 months ahead of schedule and 800,000 under budget. Not a lot of people will go line by line. It's like if Moses was out there holding up that staff, says all you have to do is look. How many people actually look, right?
Right. Small percentage.
In this effort, it's the who does the small work, because they almost think it's not gonna reap that big of a reward. Why spend time doing it? And they're wrong.
And I think that, to your point, right, in the book Atomic Habits, I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but they talked about like the European cycling team that was dead last in every Olympic event in cycling. He was the one that was charged with finding ways to improve. And it's an interesting case study that should be applied to, all aspects of our lives. But he essentially went through the entire process, like down to how much sleep are the cyclists getting? What mattresses are they sleeping on? What kinds of pillows are they resting their heads on? They looked at the seat of the bike. They looked at the nutrition of the cyclists. They looked at spokes and tires and weights, and obviously, aerodynamics. But you consider that most people just come in, and I think that they're looking for one fix, right? When I go to the doctor and I get my blood drawn, they just want you to be in that normal realm, right? Hey, you're in range, so you're good, moving on. But if you were to dive deeper and say, let's expand this and let's just go through every single line item, to use that phrase, I mean, it's not that much more work. And frankly, it's so much more educational, insightful to expand everything in that way. And then you find these little tweaks. And then, if I remember correctly, the European cycling team won like the next, it was an immediate improvement. And then they sustained it, right? And that was my point, is they didn't just have a slow turnaround. It was this hockey stick effect. And they sustained that kind of excellence, that operational excellence, as a result of it. And so you nailed it right on the head, Rich, that these opportunities are everywhere. And really, it's just a matter of having the discipline to sit down, shut the stinking phone off, and silence the notifications on your computer, and just go line by line. I find a ton of excitement in that. I love finding ways.
So 110 years, not one win. And then after that 1% thing, they won the Tour de France 5 out of 6 years.
Wow. Yep.
Fantastic.
Which
is phenomenal.
Compound effect of 1% betterment, right? And
Yeah.
And again, to your point earlier about the example you shared, it was nothing extraordinary. It was not rocket science. It wasn't a new discovery of an element. And it wasn't, hours upon hours of spreadsheets or think tanks. It was just simply breaking it down and attacking it line by line, item by item, right? So, a couple of areas that come to mind in business. I think some of the quick and easy ones would be, for example, how many invoices do we get from vendors that offer some kind of a discount if paid in advance, or not paid in advance, but paid in 10 days rather than 30 days, right? 2% 10, net 30. And I would venture to say that most business owners, that bill comes in the mail, whether it's snail mail or whether it's email, and the bookkeeper gets it, logs it into QuickBooks, they stash it in a file. When it comes time to pay that bill, they pay the bill, right? Because they're managing their cash flow. And yet, a savvy business owner or someone that's trying to find improvements somewhere could walk up and say, "Hey, we've got the cash flow. Pay that bill and take the 10% discount," right? That's a simple execution. Or calling and asking for better rates. It does not hurt anybody to call those vendors and say, "Hey, you've had our business for 10 years. Is there an area that we could just improve our rate a little bit?" Right? What areas on your insurance policies could you improve at work that would then allow you a reduction in your premiums that you're paying? These simple questions, these simple tasks of finding opportunities to improve in those costs, specifically 1% better. How do we improve our office atmosphere? One of the coolest things we did in an effort to try to improve culture. Some people just think that it's silly, but we hung up some pictures that were motivational pictures, like climbing the mountain or sailing the ship, and the famous glacier one where everybody can see the tip of success, but they don't see the glacier underneath of all the hard work that went into it. And I think it costs like $50 to hang four pictures like that. That's an improvement, right? Cost nonetheless, but an improvement to the culture and to the surrounding. For me, those opportunities, it's really kind of hard to identify where they are because they're everywhere. I think I would take it at a deeper level and just say it starts internally. Where and it needs to be an intentional effort on our part. Where can I find improvement even at 1%? Now, if you improve something every week by 1%, what is your overall improvement to the bottom line? If you had 1% improvement each week, you didn't improve by 1% by the end of the year. You improved by 52%, probably more. The compound effect of the intentionality behind today or this week or this month, this is how we're going to improve, and then you capture it again the following month. It almost turns into a game. Yeah, you set your people in motion on how do we find a way to improve that. I acknowledge that there's limits, right? You don't need to shut the air conditioning off and have everybody sitting in a sweat box, and you don't need to turn the heater off and have everybody sitting in an ice box. But I think that those opportunities are they're too available for us to ignore.
If you improved 1% a week, right? 52 weeks of the year, but from the initial starting point, you're taking 1% growth there, and you're thinking 52 weeks. If you took the end result of that 52 weeks, it's going to be significantly more than just 52% more than what you started with because of that compound. Because that next week you're just a little bit better, but you're doing 1% more from that point, not the original. And so there's power in building the momentum. It almost breaks it down to where you don't have to make these huge strides every single week. And it takes the pressure off of these massive gains that you're trying to search for that will, right? There's nothing wrong with a massive gain, but if that's all you're focused on, you're missing the small and simple things that make great things come to pass.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And an experience popped in my mind when I was doing door-to-door sales. And I think, it takes a special kind of hunter to go out and do door-to-door sales. And I just remember thinking to myself always, one more. And it wasn't even setting a limit to myself, right? It was, all right, we're off the doors at 8 p.m. or, whatever was dictated by the office team. And I would always think one more. And I found myself making 15 phone calls driving back to the apartment in the effort of just one more, right? And the compound effect of that was obviously a pipeline, right? You're creating this constant, this contact list. And you end up at the end of the year looking at how many sales did I make at the door? And then you start asking yourself how many sales were done on the phone. And the energy and excitement that floods the office of he's making deals on the phone after making deals at the doorstep. Now everybody is kicking in and doing it, right? So there was 1% improvement on my part, it personally and internally. And then there's 1% improvement as a compound effect to the entire team around us. And I think, the leadership is the final component that I wanted to kind of highlight in this. And that is when you have a leadership team that embodies and captures the vision of 1% improvement, and to your point, Rich, it isn't this like massive, oh man, my supervisor's coming down the hall to see if I slayed the dragon today. It really it kind of allows everybody to relax, and yet you're not slowing down, right? You're not out of fifth gear, but you're just like, you're attacking those opportunities to find that improvement. And you're going to naturally just start to do that all the time. And the leadership in the team is going to start asking that same question all the time. How can we is it possible to get better? Can we improve this? And it leads to my favorite thing, and that's KPIs. When you've got an opportunity to sit somebody down in front of a computer or on their phone, right? And you've got this Google Doc or this spreadsheet that you all share, and they get the privilege of going in at the end of the day and they report that number, whatever that metric is for them, good or bad. It's the opportunity where accountability settles in. And what you're doing with KPIs, and I've preached this 100 times, KPIs are great for data. They teach us, they show us, they help us make decisions, but really it's a psychological tool. It's a psychological leverage point for the leadership to help guide the ship where it needs to go without micromanaging people, without being all over them, being that helicopter boss. And so these KPIs push us to find ways to that 1% betterment, that 1% improvement. And then after probably, I know everybody says 30 days is how long it takes to create a habit, but really after like 6 weeks, sometimes 3 months, it's this automatic, like, well, how did we compare to last month? And how did we compare to this time last year? And then your entire team is thinking the same thing. Well, if we weren't better than last month, what can we do to improve next month? And then that flywheel has already got like its own momentum. So KPIs are a big deal.
On the concept of the one more thing,
Yeah.
it brought me back to growing up on the farm. My brother and I, we made up this song we would sing in the tractor. Only One More Row was the title of the song. And it was like the same line, only one more row to music. And we just sing that over and over. It was just crazy. But when you go out and look at the field to start off with, you've got this massive amount of work you've got to do. And it has to get done, and you go out and you start and you do your first row, and then you come back and you look and it's not even like a dent. But if you looked at the whole picture, it's easy to get overwhelmed and you start focusing on how much more you have to do. But just focusing on that one row and just doing, again, like you said, just one more call or one more, or one more, I'm going to save one more dollar, right? I'm going to go invest one more dollar. It's that next step that I think becomes pivotal. And we've talked about that analogy about the most important step, someone can take. It's not the first one, and it's not even the last one when you finish, that project. It's the next step, regardless of where you're at. What's the next step you're going to take? And I love adding the bent on what's the next step you're going to take for a 1% improvement.
I think that in that vein, celebrating those wins is kind of a big deal. It reminds the team that, yeah, we know we've got this dragon to slay, but one pass, it makes me think go-kart racing. I've got a 14-year-old son who weighs about 90 pounds soaking wet. And, I'm over 200. And there's no question in my mind that his car is going to go faster than mine, right? So I no longer, and I'm sorry, I want to beat my son every time we compete. I want to be better than him, but he beats me at plenty. So instead of whining and griping about not being able to beat him, I just say, okay, I'm going to try and beat my lap every time and hope that it's enough at the end of the race, right? So I'm going to get 8 laps in before the race is over. You look up at the screen as you're passing by, like, okay, 25 seconds. I got to get to 24, right? And that for me is the game, right? It's no longer really about beating Brody. It's, can I get better? Can I take a tighter turn? Can I not spin out on that turn? Can I lean a little bit and gain a little bit of momentum? And just, again, small wins, right? You pass the finish line, 23 seconds. Woohoo, I did great. Can I do 22, right? And just celebrate, reset, walk around the office, give high fives. Maybe it's Donut Friday, reset, because the first you wake up and it's a new clock, it's a new game. So the leadership component there, again, managing KPIs, but then celebrating with your team it helps everybody remember that you're not trying to, take down the whole field in one pass.
That's fantastic. I love that focus.
It's contagious, right? Like,
Yeah.
Deep down, we want to set goals that we can achieve, but we don't want to set goals that are just easy either. We want something that stretches us a little bit, but we don't want to feel like it's unattainable. And so just, from a leadership standpoint, you find ways to make it palpable, okay? Like, I know it seems daunting right now, but let's not worry about the other, the back half. Let's just worry about the front half, and let's slay this part of the beast for now.
So asking the question, for an investor, someone's investing in whether it's real estate or a business, right? Asking the question, what does improvement look like for them?
I loved your comment about, the next right step, because throwing out there the next step is not always appropriate for everybody in the different levels that they're at in life. And so the next right step for a potential investor, what would that look like? Well, maybe it's somebody who is they've paid off some of the debt that they've got, and now they're in a position where they think they're ready to invest, but they have no idea where to start. I think the next right step there would just be to have a conversation, call somebody or talk to somebody or get a referral to somebody who can educate you on what it might look like to invest. And there's a lot of platforms out there, right? And you could get tripped up in it. But then I think the other opportunity is to identify what you might enjoy investing in. And if it's in real estate or business acquisition or other opportunities, then you dive a little bit deeper on those. And that's where your metrics come in, and you can get some case studies on, if I put in 50,000, what might that look like over the next 5 years?
One of the things I loved about your one of those first stories you told, you're working in your business, P&L, right? And you came home and told your wife, and she's like, well, can you do that for us? Right. And sometimes you look at it and it's like, oh, it's just, I've enjoyed doing that when I've had more money coming in than when I don't have any money coming in and doing it. It's like, it's not the same effect, right? But at the same time, regardless of where you're at, doing that line item on, okay, just let's break it down into categories. Financial. So you have your financial categories, right? What's 1% improvement you can make on your expenses and bring that back in? You invest that over time, 1% a week. That's significant, especially if you put that in an investment and then that grows. But there's also what percentage improvement of time can you do? And maybe it's for yourself. It's taking 1% and making that your time, and focusing and doing getting those clarity moments.
I love that one. I sit with my kids all the time and I break down their day and I say, look, if you go to bed at 9 p.m. and you wake up at 6 a.m., you've got effectively, and I didn't do the math in my head, but you've effectively got 18 hours in your day, right? Which I know that math doesn't math, but typically you got 18 hours in your day. What are you doing with it? And that's an exercise for anybody, by the way. Like I do that frequently. What am I doing? How am I allocating all my time? And you can absolutely allocate, an extra percent to education or whatever you want to be better at. Just a couple months ago, Emily and I were going through everything, and we were paying a gym membership that allowed us to take our kids to that gym. And it even had like a daycare center so we could take our 7-year-old there and she could hang out for an hour while we worked out. And it was costing us probably like $260 a month, which seemed like a good deal, right? We've got 5 kids or 7 in our family. So, cost per head's a sweet deal for our family. But then I found that the community center, which is actually closer, it's a shorter distance there than it is to the gym, was charging like $60 a month for the entire family and included, the kid zone. And I'm like, babe, we just found $200 a month. That's $2,400 a year, cost savings to the bottom line, right? And that decision was super simple to make, right? Called, eliminated that. So they're everywhere, man. And I loved your example. You kind of sounded like Dave Ramsey a little bit. What could you do with that $200 a month, invested in something? What does that compound to over time? That's a powerful visual for people to exercise and see what that does. Love it. Yeah. So anyway, the power of 1%. Again, that number might seem super insignificant. However, I think that, and I know that if people have the determination, the discipline to sit and actually go line by line, print out that bank statement of yours, your personal bank statement, and just see where all of your money is going line by line. Categorize them, study them, get serious about it, and see where it is that you can improve, not just in expenses, but see where you can improve in your personal life. I have enjoyed reporting weekly on date night with my wife, whether that's happening or not, and that's made a massive improvement to our relationship.
What does that mean, reporting on date night?
So one of our, we use EOS, and so we use a scorecard, but you could also, it's synonymous with a KPI. One of our KPI points is, did we complete a date night with our significant other? Did we spend quality time with them in the form of a date?
Yeah, and this is our leadership meeting, executive leadership meeting. That's one of our KPIs. Did we take the time?
And we account for it. And it's called out. Hey, there's 3 out of 4 here. who didn't get their date night and how can we help? I've never once, by the way, felt like it was criticism or I didn't feel like it was shaming at all. It was seriously from the standpoint of what can we do to help make sure that that time is respected. And we don't want to set the expectation that work supersedes that event each week. So if everybody makes an intentional effort on where they can find 1% better in life, in your search for God, in business specifically, there's lots of different ways to improve. And I really think that you're going to find that the compound effect is unmatched as you exercise that. Now, we encourage you to like, subscribe to this channel, to this podcast. We really would love to hear those experiences about ways you've made improvements under the 1% betterment idea, and just would love to share that with all of you and celebrate those wins with you. So with that, we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.